I want you guys to talk a little bit about this decision fatigue that comes in with organization and how that can almost be enhanced in situations like this in organizing the things of your loved one that's passed.
I think my situation with my mom was, it's extremely common. She got sick. I was dealing with an extremely complex medical situation. There were lots and lots of decisions along the way through those weeks of how to manage her care. These days with medical care, there's so many specialists. You're talking to a million people. You're communicating with family. You're dealing with funeral preparations. All of the decisions that go into that is exhausting. And you really do develop decision fatigue. What we like to call decision fatigue, and that you've made so many decisions that it's hard to make even simple decisions. Your brain cannot do it anymore. Right. And then your decisions start to not be as good. You're just tapped out.
Right. And also it's usually, like things that you have to make decisions on right away, right? Mm-hmm. So it's easier in some cases, and understandably so, to just put them off. Right. Like you were saying, right? I mean, right. That happens, and that's okay.
But I think that's great. I mean, I think absolutely. If you can give yourself a break and put them off, then like you did, you took a certain amount of the contents of their house and put it in a closet and said, I'll get to it when I feel like I'm in my right mind. If you have the opportunity to do that, I think that's great. But I felt like by the time I got to setting up, I was the executor of my mom's estate. So by the time I got to like cleaning out her house, I mean, it was just, I needed help because I just couldn't, there were so many things, what to get rid of, how to get rid of it, when to get rid of it, like all of that, the entire contents of the house, it was just very, very difficult.
That's important to note. You, the professional organizer, brought in help.
Yes, I think everybody needs help. Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a sister, anything. You need help. I mean, you cannot do this by yourself. You don't have to hire a professional. But you need somebody to help make decisions.
I think a third party who's not emotionally connected to the situation can be incredibly helpful. So for me, my mom was like, books were like her life force. She loved books. She had tons of books. I couldn't take all of her books at my house, and I couldn't ship them out to California. So I went through and picked out the books that I wanted, and then I left, and I had these ladies come in and pack up all the books and put them in boxes and take them away.
Oh, that's smart. That's kind of the way that I feel with some of the stuff that I still have remaining now. I think I would be fine to part with them, but it's that physical act of boxing them up and giving them away that is painful a little bit.
100%.
Right. It's like seeing them actually leave the house, right?
Yeah.
And being boxed up is almost harder than the actual decision to give them away, right? Because 100%. It feels very final, and it feels very much like now these are no longer ours or hers. Now they're going to be somebody else's, which is like a whole level of letting go.
Yeah. And I think, for me, it's like they won't know. The people who get this book won't know how special the person who had this book was. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. My advice to somebody going through this process is to figure out your categories that are hard. For me, it was books. For somebody else, it might be their clothing. It might be their cookbooks. You know best what's going to be difficult for you, but you can't have help 100% of the time. Pick out those categories that you're going to be especially sensitive about and get some help.
And I would just add that what is helpful too, and this person can help you perhaps, is finding a good home for those things that you cannot keep and are ready to part with. I think it's so helpful to know if, these books are going to a local library, if the clothes is going to a women's shelter, or if the, kitchen materials are going to help an immigrant family or a family who's, moving into their first apartment. I feel like that can give you such satisfaction and relief in knowing that at least things are going to a good cause and to somebody who will enjoy them. I think it makes it a lot easier than, for instance, just being like throwing them in a trash can, of course, so.
Just an anecdote to kind of exemplify what Nicole just said. And one of the many ways Nicole has helped me, and especially during this time with my mom, is, she lived down in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where NC State University is. My mom had, a kitchen full of stuff. I have a kitchen full of stuff. I could not really take very many of her kitchen items. Nicole's nephew, Ben, who's such a great guy, was a student at NC State, and she called him and he came over and took almost all the kitchen stuff and brought it to international students at NC State who didn't really have a lot of things for their apartment. And he came, he took it off my hands, he distributed it, and I knew my mom would just love that it went to those students. I just knew it was the perfect place for her stuff. And it was like, great, thank you. And it was done. Gianna, we talked, previously about when somebody passes away, there's so many well-meaning people who come around and say, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And it's very hard, like, I don't really
know what you need.
Do anything to help, but maybe that's a task you could assign to someone. How about you research where we could get the books that would be meaningful to me? It would have been meaningful to my mom. And, maybe I could just put you in charge of that.
And maybe, you have somebody who's willing to lift all of these, because there's the logistics, that go on. So, once you've even decided that you're going to donate these books to the local library, like, you've got to actually get that done.
Yeah. Also, another one of the things that you guys had said was you talked about clutter is unmade decisions. And I loved that because I feel like it really put like this label on what this is. And really it just boils down to decisions of what to do with some things. I do find myself like moving things from one pile to another pile. I'm not actually cleaning. I'm not actually organizing. I'm just shifting things around, but it makes me feel like I made a decision on something, even though I really didn't. So I love this thing about bringing somebody in to help you make those decisions. You had talked about a client who you've worked with many times before actually hired you guys to help a friend of hers who had just lost her husband, which is something I have never thought of or heard of before. But holy shit, is that a fabulous, fabulous gift for somebody that's grieving?
I think she knew enough, this client of ours who hired us, she knew enough to know as a mother and not as somebody who had lost her husband, but as a mom and somebody who makes a million decisions every day, that like her friend who had just lost her husband suddenly at a very young age was just not going to be capable of making all of these decisions and taking care of her kids and taking care of herself.
And it was the beginning of the pandemic.
It was the beginning of the pandemic. So there was no funeral. There was no school. The kids were at home. She didn't have time to grieve. Her kids didn't have time to grieve. They couldn't have people visit. It was just,
oh my God, that makes me sick to my stomach. Yeah.
The worst possible situation. And this woman who hired us, I mean, is a phenomenal person regardless, but I thought it was just brilliant. And it's not, again, we're not like, we kind of jump into every situation that, we're faced with, and every situation is a little bit different. And so it wasn't entirely clear what we were going to do, but we just sort of went to her, the widow. We said, okay, what can we do? And she said, make an Amazon wish list, come and help my kids get their desks set up for virtual learning. Help me take some of these things out of my closet because I can't look at them every day. And so it was just like, she kind of was present enough, like you were saying, like you kind of go on overdrive to know the things that needed to be done, but there was no way she was going to be able to execute them.
To actually,
I thought it was, it was a great gift to her. And again, just having people who were going to be empathetic and sympathetic to her situation, but that didn't necessarily know her, was just having a third party, I think was helpful because she could just give us direction and tell us how to help. And we were there to, do what she needed. So.
Absolutely.